I'm sure you've noticed that the ads you see online are perfectly creepily tailored to your specific interests. That, of course, is no mistake. Big tech firms, including Google, Amazon, Facebook, they use individual user data to generate targeted ads, a move that leads to huge profits for those platforms. But now, according to the American Prospect, 38 different organizations have come together to try to end that surveillance economy and the mass collection of user data.
So joining us now, Prospect Executive Editor David Dayen to discuss that growing backlash against targeted ads. It's good to see you, David. There's some really interesting developments here because, as I understand it, this not only comes in terms of organizations, but also a big fight and showdown between Apple and Facebook. So can you just detail all of what's going on here?
Sure. So I've been talking about this idea of just ending targeted ads, ending the surveillance economy for many years, and was gratified to see that this has become a pillar of the movement against big tech. So all these organizations that aren't completely aligned, by the way, have gotten together and started talking about what if we just banned advertising that surveils and individually targets users? This is totally an available policy. It's something that we do with banning ads to children. We ban cigarette ads. This is something within the power of the federal government. And as user privacy becomes a bigger and more important desire on the part of the public, and on the part of other corporations, you mentioned Apple, which is trying to create an ecosystem that doesn't have this kind of ad targeting in it, and Facebook is really mad about that and pushing back. It becomes more possible. And of course, in the House, in the antitrust subcommittee, you have Democrats and Republicans working together on various strategies to weaken the power of big tech, and this is an area where they could make some headway.
Yeah.
So let me channel my big tech apologists and say what I imagine that they would say in response to this is great for consumers because we figure out what they actually want. We display it for them, makes them easier to find, the things that they may be looking for, things that they need or want that they don't even know that they need or want. So what's the big deal?
I lived in the world prior to about 2010, and I was somehow able to find everything that I needed, and was able to locate it and purchase it if I wanted to. There's pretty strong evidence that targeting doesn't actually make ads that much more relevant. There was a study that showed that an ad targeting service was only able to correctly identify the gender, which seemingly would be very easy if you have all this data. They only identified it 42% of the time correctly. These are not really great strategies, number one. And even if they were, the harms, I believe, outweigh the benefits. You have mass invasion of privacy, opens up people to data breaches. You have the ability for individual companies to discriminate because they have this information. They could, there are examples of this: housing discrimination, employment discrimination by companies who use Facebook and say, hey, only show me ads to only show my ads to white people, for example. So I think that the benefits here do not outweigh the harms. And as government should be looking out for people and protecting them from various harms, and I'm not even getting into the fact that the surveillance economy creates and forwards a disinformation machine, and creates many of the problems that we see in social media.
So it's interesting there, David, in terms of not just the harms, but necessarily on the advertising front. Now, what would if something were like this going to move forward, what does it look like?
Well, I mean, you can say that all individually targeted ads must be banned, that you can use research as a general rule. If a publisher says, I've sampled my audience has a lot of high net worth people, you can certainly tell that to advertisers, and advertisers can then say, okay, I want to run my ads on the Wall Street Journal or on Snowboarding Monthly or whatever it is. Right now, Google and Facebook are able to individually target people around the web. And so they've robbed individual publishers of the sort of specialness of their audiences. And this is another way that targeted ads are really harmful, because they have ruined the business model of so many publishers and news outlets in particular. So this has created news deserts. This has created the death of journalism in many ways. Mm-hmm. So that's how I think it would work. And you know, after targeted ads are banned, Google and Facebook would still have billions of eyeballs. They'd still have the ability to sample those audiences and say, we have an attractive audience to you, and they'd still be able to sell ads. And if they aren't able, it's not really government's problem. It's not government's role to guarantee a profit for Google and Facebook. So I think that this policy would return competition to the marketplace. It would return the ability for news sites to build a niche and build an audience and sell ads off it. It would be better for consumers ultimately, because of the lack of privacy harms, the lack of potential discrimination harms, and it would be better for the overall ecosystem and better for democracy.
Yeah, I think that's all well said. David, thank you so much.
Thanks, David.
All right, thanks.
Yep. Coming up, friend of the show, journalist and author Matt Taibbi discusses his new book, The Business Secrets of Drug Dealing. That's when Rising returns.